defiance, Muslim Brotherhood leaders unfazed by arrest warrants against them. Healing on course, South African presidency says Mandela's condition is improving. And repatriation plans, UNHCR and Kenya mull over the plight of Somali refugees. You're watching Africa Live. Hello and thank you for joining us. Penina Karibe in Nairobi. There's plenty coming up this hour, including the following stories. Strengthening cooperation. Nigeria and China sign agreements to boost trade and investment ties. And excitement among Man City players despite a low-key reception in South Africa. We begin in North Africa, where prominent Muslim Brotherhood leader spoke out against the Egyptian authorities on Wednesday after arrest warrants were issued for him and the top officials. The authorities have escalated their crackdown on the Muslim Brotherhood, ordering the arrest of its supreme leader for allegedly inciting violence. This comes a week after more than 50 supporters of ousted President Mohamed Morsi were killed in clashes with security forces. Clementine Logan has more.
The Muslim Brotherhood's supreme leader, Mohamed Badi, is a wanted man. Just 1 week after the military deposed Egypt's first democratically elected president, Mohamed Morsi, prosecutors issued a warrant for his arrest, as well as 9 other leading Brotherhood members. Egypt's military has already jailed 5 Brotherhood leaders and shut down its media outlets, a move the Muslim Brotherhood says is undemocratic.
This military regime revealed its ugly face straight away by the unfair arrest of hundreds of people, fabricating cases and closing down television channels which oppose the military coup. This is an example of police rule that we are fighting against to return to democracy and freedom.
Members of the Muslim Brotherhood are suspected of instigating Monday's violence outside a Republican Guard building, which developed into the worst bloodshed since Morsi was toppled. More than 50 of his supporters died in clashes with security forces. The army described them as terrorists who provoked the shooting by attacking its troops. The arrest warrants highlight the armed forces' zero-tolerance policy towards the Brotherhood, which was banned under former President Hosni Mubarak. The prosecutor also ordered 206 Brotherhood activists to be detained for 15 more days, releasing 464 others on bail of about $300 each. Now the Muslim Brotherhood is demanding nothing less than Morsi's release and his reinstatement as president.
We do not acknowledge the military coup, which was against our will, choices, freedom and our practice of democracy. We reject it and all the procedures that resulted from this coup. We still have hope and are aware that the great Egyptian army must defend this legitimacy and not break the freedom and the will of the people.
Recent bloodshed has exposed deep divisions in the country, and with the Muslim Brotherhood refusing offers by the military-backed interim leadership to join a transition plan for a new government, Egypt's political and social crisis threatens to be a drawn-out one. Clementine Logan, CCTV.
Famida Mila is our eye on the ground. She joins us now live from Cairo. Famida, what is the latest on this developing story? Oh, well, we'll try and reconnect with Famida in just a while. But staying on Egypt matters, the United Arab Emirates and the Arab world's second biggest economy pledged $3 billion in financial aid to Egypt less than a week after President Mohamed Morsi was toppled. The package includes $1 billion in aid and a $2 billion interest-free deposit with the Egyptian Central Bank. This was followed by another $5 billion from Saudi Arabia and $4 billion from Kuwait. Kim looks at the importance of Arab aid at this stage and how Egypt will make use of it.
The $12 billion pledged by the 3 strongest Arab economies is seen as a sign of intent towards the new leadership. Experts say it would not have come at a better time.
About $5 billion will be placed as interest-free deposits at the central bank. The rest are non-repayable grants and free gas and petrol deals. It is crucial to help sustain the foreign currency reserves, as well as attending to the energy shortage problem in Egypt.
And this comes as a major boost to an economy that has lost a large percentage of its main source of income, such as tourism and foreign investments. It also makes up for the stalled IMF $4.8 billion loan negotiations. With the political instability keeping investors away, Egypt's only option is to turn to its Arab neighbors.
The people who are first able to deal with that political turmoil and adapt to it are the local businesses and local investors, because they're the ones who understand the country and understand how to deal with those kinds of risks. The second stage would be the regional players, because they're the ones who are also more familiar with what's happening in that country. And then on the third level, you'll find international investments who are less able to deal with it unless they have a strong local partner. So if you look at the Arab investors, you'll find that they come from the second category.
The UAE had already announced a $1 billion investment in electricity sector and is pledging more in the coming months.
In spite of the political turmoil, experts say the interim president has started on a good note by appointing Hazem al-Biblawi, an economic expert, as the new prime minister, a positive sign for the business community. Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
All right, so we now have CCTV's Famida Mila live in Cairo. Let's cross over to her. Famida, what's the latest from that end?
Thanks very much, Panina. Well, to look at that package further and discuss Egypt's economic situation, we're joined by our correspondent Yasser Hakim. Yasser, we're looking at a background here of 3 credit rating cuts in 18 to 24-month period. What has that meant for Egypt's economic stability?
When any cut happens, it means for any country is that they are not able to take any loans. If they want to take loans, then the risk is higher, so the interest rates are higher. Investors get away from going to this country or keep away when they know that there are cuts. So there's no more investment opportunities for Egypt. That's not good news at this point, until there's a new government, an elected parliament and a president. I don't think it will get any better on this ground or on this side of the story.
Now, looking at some of the detail that you brought to us a little while ago, in terms of the $3 billion finance, or rather aid package that's coming from the UAE, this is more than just a financial boost, but it's also a political statement in terms of international support for what's happened in the last 10 days in Egypt.
It's true, and not just the United Arab Emirates. Kuwait has jumped in with $4 billion and Saudi Arabia with $5 billion. So in 3-4 days, they've got $12 billion. It makes up a lot of money, especially if we know that Egypt's trying to get a $4.8 billion from the IMF for 2 years, and it's not able to do that. Now, getting $12 billion is perfect for Egypt at this point. It will help on the currency reserves. It will also help telling the world that there is potential in Egypt, there is hope in Egypt, and that there are investors willing to come in and put their money in the country, and not just any money. It's $12 billion this week. And maybe the international arena, the international business community would look at this move and this support from the Arab states and think twice and say, maybe we can at least sit and listen to the Egyptian side, not have to invest immediately, but at least talk with the Egyptian side and see what's coming up or what is planned for Egypt economically.
And how much is a factor America, the US decision to not yet class what's happened here as a coup? This, of course, would affect the aid they provide specifically to the military here in Egypt. What does that mean for Egypt at this point?
The aid is around $1.5 billion, and that's been suspended for now. The good part is for the Egyptian side is that the Europeans are not taking the stand of the US. Usually the Europeans go behind the US in such circumstances. But on this issue, it's alone. The US alone is standing on it. It will not just affect the $1.5 billion, but also a lot of investments and trade with Egypt. The US is the biggest trade partner for Egypt in many areas. There's a lot of US aid from Egypt away from the military, and this will be suspended for a while and will affect the businesses. And that's why maybe the Arab states came in at this point. They're trying to sustain the economic side for a while.
Now, this aid package that's coming from the Arab states was following a meeting with the new Prime Minister. What are the hopes regarding the new Prime Minister, the direction he'll take in terms of economic reform, especially considering his financial background?
Exactly. He was a former Minister of Finance. And he said he's going to work first on the security side so that it will so sort of grow some confidence for investors that they can come to a safe area. So he will work on reconciliation, national reconciliation with the old political factions, on security, and this will in itself bring in investments, tourism back, two of the main sources of hard currency for Egypt. And from experts in the region and in Egypt, political experts and economic experts as well, they're saying he has a good plan and he's probably going to succeed in this in the next few months.
Yasser, we'll leave you there for the moment. As always, thank you very much. We're speaking there to our correspondent, Yasser Hakim, and we return back to Nairobi. Penina.
Thank you, Famida. Famida Miller there and Yasser Hakim live in Cairo. You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a break. Coming up. Healing on cause. South African presidency says Mandela's condition is improving. And repatriation plans. UNHCR and Kenya mull over the plight of Somali refugees.
We follow the latest trends in global politics, economics, culture and sport, and how Africa fits into the global picture. You decide what's important.
We need a trade justice.
Africa's future will be determined by Africa.
For women's equal opportunity, for a better life.
We have to change something, and it's not the outsiders.
Talk Africa, a new voice for the world.
And welcome back. Nelson Mandela is responding well to treatment. This is according to the latest official statement issued by South African President Jacob Zuma on Wednesday. Zuma urged the public to continue providing support and showering Mandela with love, which gives him and the family strength. The king of the Tembu tribe, which includes Nelson Mandela's clan, also told reporters that the former South African president was in a better condition.
Madiba is looking good according to me, and he hasn't been talking, but I got some good gestures from him. He hasn't been able to smile. I did get that little smile from his face, which I appreciated very much. It was a blessing to me.
Now let's discuss this further with CCTV's Guy Henderson. He is live in Pretoria. Guy, so what does this update from the presidency mean medically for Mr. Mandela? Do we have any idea what state he is in now?
Well, the last time that Nelson Mandela went into hospital on the 28th of March, it took only a few hours for the presidency to release a statement saying that he was responding to treatment. But this time, the 8th of June he was admitted, so it's taken 33 days for the presidency to release information saying not that he's responding positively to treatment like they did last time, but at least saying that he is responding to treatment. Now, in terms of getting more detail about his actual state in the hospital behind me here in Pretoria, well, the presidency have said all along that that is confidential information. We can wean various things, I think, from what friends have said, having visited Mr. Mandela in hospital, who have made public statements afterwards. You heard one of them there. Various friends have said that he is now conscious, that he's not necessarily able to talk, but that he is apparently communicating by using his eyes, by fluttering his eyelids, for example. We also heard on Wednesday from his granddaughters who were on the Twitter sphere doing a question and answers session, and they said during that question and answer session that he was managing to smile at them as well. So there are a few positive signs. So I think clearly his health has gradually improved, perhaps against the odds. But remember, he is 94, he is on a life support machine, and the chances of somebody with his condition at the age of 94 coming off that life support machine do remain very, very slim.
Indeed, but nevertheless a good fight for Nelson Mandela so far. Let's talk about today, Guy, the 11th of July. Quite a significant date. It marks the day 1962 that almost the entire ANC leadership was arrested. So do South Africans still mark this day, or is it just a distant past to people now?
Yes, well, this was the day in 1963 when this very significant police raid took place on a small farm that was then in rural Johannesburg, a place called Lily's Leaf. During that raid, the police managed to arrest pretty much the entire leadership of the resistance movement inside South Africa. They managed to gather a mountain of documents. Nelson Mandela wasn't actually there on that day. He'd already been arrested on entering the country almost a year before. But much of the documentation, much of the evidence that was collected by police during that raid that was seen actually as quite careless actions by the ANC of having left such a clear paper trail, that evidence was used against them, used against Nelson Mandela in that very famous trial, the Rivonia trial, that saw most of the leadership within South Africa then heading to jail, to Robben Island and other prisons in South Africa. So it was a very significant day. It was a day that really could have may have set back the resistance movement, the fight for racial equality by several decades. Saying that, it's not necessarily seen as one of the big days in the South African calendar. History, of course, does fade with time, although perhaps less here than it does in some other countries, given that apartheid only ended just under 20 years ago in 1994. But I think since the 8th of June, since Nelson Mandela was admitted to hospital, each time one of these historic dates comes up, and we saw it on the 16th of June as well, when there was an anniversary of the Soweto riots in 1976, each time one of those dates comes up, this year particularly, I think that has been a chance for South Africans to reflect more, perhaps, than they have in recent years, on the huge sacrifices that were made by Mr. Mandela and his colleagues that essentially allowed South Africa to be as it is today.
And another huge day also coming up, Guy, is of course Mandela's birthday, which is just about a week away from now. He'll be turning 95. This is going to be a hugely significant event this year, isn't it? And what's planned there in South Africa?
Well, it will be International Mandela Day, in fact. The 4th International Mandela Day since the United Nations officially recognized it as such. And this year it will be obviously very significant given Nelson Mandela's ongoing illness. The theme is going to be around this idea of 67 minutes, and that is basically the number of years, 67 years, that Nelson Mandela is said to have dedicated his life to social justice and racial equality in South Africa. And what we're going to see across the country and hopefully across the world as well is people being encouraged to give 67 minutes of their time to do a good deed, to do a deed for somebody else that makes a positive impact on the world. Certainly in South Africa, it's going to be a big event. We're going to see a big significant itinerary by the ANC. President Jacob Zuma is likely to speak. Of course, we'll see tributes coming in from world leaders and very probably the UN Secretary General himself. Details are still emerging. I think people have been preoccupied to some extent with Mr. Mandela's health. So hopefully in South Africa and right across the world, it's going to be a chance for people to celebrate, and I think probably quite a moving day as well.
Indeed, Guy, thanks very much for joining us. Guy Henderson live there in Pretoria. Now, in just under a month, Kenya will play host to 6 neighboring countries that house Somali refugees to discuss their repatriation. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Antonio Guterres, visited both Somalia and Kenya on Wednesday and says the repatriation should be on a voluntary basis. But as CCTV's Robert Nagila reports, there are still several hurdles to be overcome.
One camp, over 500,000 displaced people, each with a different story to tell. Situated in northeastern Kenya and covering a total area of 50 square kilometers, the Dadaab refugee camp is the largest refugee camp in the world. The camp's population is made up mainly of Somali refugees, but with over 5,000 Kenyan troops under the AU peacekeeping mission in Somalia, Kenya wants to start repatriating Somali refugees back to their country, saying they pose a significant threat to national security. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees says, in principle, at least all neighboring countries hosting some 1 million Somali refugees have agreed the repatriation will be voluntary.
There is one thing that is essential. It is the recognition of the right of choice. And you need to respect the right of people to choose their future and not to play God, defining for them what is best for them, provided that their choice is made in an informed way.
The UN agency is proposing a phased approach where those who agree will be assisted to return to specific areas considered safe, but warns all those concerned must be in agreement for it to work.
It's important that the six governments, the government of Somalia and of the 5 hosting countries, Kenya, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Yemen and Uganda, have a common, consistent and coherent approach in order to allow for this process to be conducted in a successful way.
According to estimates by the Kenyan government, about 50% of the refugees in Dadaab are willing to voluntarily return. In August, Kenya will play host to Somalia and neighboring countries affected by the crisis to chart a way forward. Now, until the August conference is held, nothing is really certain about the repatriation of Somali refugees from Kenya. However, there's an even bigger problem to consider. In 2013, at least 21,000 Somali refugees have been recorded in neighboring countries. This compared to 78,000 in the whole of 2012. And many now say that until the security situation in Somalia has been sorted out, nothing is really possible. Robert McGill, CCTV, Nairobi.
Meanwhile, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta says the repatriation of Somali refugees should be smooth and safely done. CCTV's Beatrice Marshall caught up with Mr. Kenyatta and sought his thoughts on Somali refugees living in Kenya.
For a long time, we have hosted many hundreds of thousands of Somali refugees. And it is in Kenya's interest to ensure that this situation is resolved in the shortest possible time. You know, as Dadaab, for example, there was one refugee camp alone in Kenya, which is equivalent to our 3rd largest city. And the pressure that is causing on the local environment, the pressure that it's causing on our own resources as a nation is tremendous. So for us, the sooner that we can create an enabling environment within Somalia into which these refugees can return and begin, like I said, developing their own country and easing the pressure that their presence in Kenya is causing on our own resources and our own environment, the better for Kenya, and I also believe the better for Somalia. So this really will continue to remain a central issue to Kenya, given the burden that we are currently carrying with the great number of refugees that are currently based in Kenya.
Kenya's defense forces, though, are still inside Somalia. What role does Kenya see itself playing in Somalia now and moving forward?
The Kenya defense forces are in Somalia first and foremost to ensure that we protect our own national interests that has been threatened by the growing incidences of piracy and terrorism caused by, brought about by Al-Shabaab. And we will continue to make that a priority with our engagement currently in Somalia. But at the same time, we do hope that with the presence of not just the KDF forces, but the AMISOM forces as a whole, we will be able to create a peaceful and stable environment so that the many refugees who have fled as a result of the insecurity that has prevailed in some of those regions are able to return and once again join with their fellow citizens in building and developing their own country. So I think our mission is, like I'm saying, twofold. One, to ensure that we help the federal government create a peaceful and a stable environment within Somalia, but in the interest of our own national security and our own national interest, to ensure that we combat the threat of terrorism that is brought about by Al-Shabaab and the threat of piracy that is destabilizing trade not just in Kenya but throughout the region.
Time for another break here on Africa Live. Coming up, the race against time. Residents in eastern Congo stock up in fear of imminent war. and freedom for endangered parrots in Uganda. Welcome back. Residents in rebel-controlled territory in the eastern DR Congo are preparing for what they fear to be an imminent outbreak of fresh violence. Many are rushing to salvage what crops they can from their cultivated fields. This follows recent clashes between government forces and the M23 rebel group. CCTV's Hilary Ayesiga has more.
For years, people in this region have endured deadly clashes in which hundreds have died and thousands more fled. Some have risked their lives to stay behind and work the land to put food on the table. But now, many fear renewed fighting and they are harvesting as much as they can.
We start cultivating under the pressure of war. We struggle to cultivate quickly so that when war breaks, at least we would have planted something. Sometimes when we are lucky, we reach the harvesting time when there is no war. But now we are under pressure of war, so we have to harvest very fast so that when it breaks, at least we have some money to run with.
Last year's surprise advance by the M23 rebels into the regional capital Goma reportedly disrupted the planting season. Soldiers and rebels were said to have seized food from fields or people's homes. Aid agencies say lost harvests have left some communities at risk of hunger. Farmers here want the conflict to end.
We get worried of how and when this conflict will end. Long time ago we would enjoy our crops, but these days we invest some money in farming and we get almost nothing because we are forced to harvest prematurely or abandon the crops in the field.
Most of the food is now sold across the border in Uganda on busy market days. This means farmers here do not store food stocks to last till next harvest season.
Here we don't feel good because we can't keep food in the house. We sell everything very fast and this is likely to result into famine. Even if there's no war, people are in panic. They are selling everything. So even if the war does not come, we shall still suffer from food shortage.
The UN's World Food Programme distributes food rations to people affected by conflicts. But the agency says continued tension has hampered its efforts here. UN agencies say many people in eastern Congo are affected by chronic malnutrition and fear that if there is continued fighting, many homesteads will fail to put food on the table. Hilary Ayesiga, CCTV, Kampala.
Now to Uganda, well, there's been a happy ending for 17 African grey parrots rescued from smugglers in Eastern Europe. They finally won their freedom. The birds can fetch $2,000 each on the black market, but many die in captivity. CCTV's Isabel Nakiria has the story.
This aviary at Ngamba Islands on Lake Victoria has been home to the parrots since they were confiscated by airport officials in Bulgaria about 3 years ago. The smugglers had 108 birds in their possession, but only 32 came back to Uganda alive. During the 3 months confinement, the parrots were closely monitored and found to have good flight feathers and strong muscles, and vets say they will be able to fend for themselves in the wild. An opening was left on the aviaries so the parrots could fly away when they chose.
We've called it wide release back into the wild, but apparently the birds have to discover on their own and see there is a window somewhere so we can escape. Apparently it is a voluntary escape. I'm sure you must be wondering why we need to get the birds and release them set free. That would be really unacceptable because we don't want to interfere. We want them to learn through a gradual process.
17 have been freed, but 10 parrots are still under special care. The rest died. The parrots are mainly found in rainforests in West and Central Africa. They are an endangered species, but people are captivated by their ability to mimic humans. Some can speak up to 1,600 words, and that's provided a lucrative market for illegal traders.
We're actually talking of millions of parrots that have been taken away. And the consequence of that is that populations in many areas have declined dramatically. And there's very little data from a lot of places, but where there is information, the signs aren't really good.
Conservationists say people must be better educated.
The importance of education, the importance of young children learning that these animals are not just here for us to catch and play with and put in homes and put in tiny cages. They're here because they're part of an amazing natural world.
Under the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, only limited numbers of parrots can be moved or traded. But smugglers continue to sell the birds to buyers in Europe and Asia. Isabel Nakiria, CCTV, Ngamba Islands, Central Uganda.